OBSBOT just released a couple of new webcams, the Tiny 3 and the Tiny 3 Lite, and it is with D-Lite that I have them right here. Funny enough, the Tiny 3 Lite is the bigger one and the Tiny 3 is the smaller one. So the Tiny really does live up to its name because it's extremely tiny. Now in recent months, I've had a lot of fun putting together different video podcasting setups to kind of suit different needs and workflows. And this video is sponsored by OBSBOT because I've been wanting to put together a podcasting setup based around webcams, something that is super compact, super portable. I'm kind of curious, can you use webcams for that? And this timing works out perfectly because I can combine these two new webcams with my existing Tiny 2, and now I've got everything I need. Sorry for my giant hand in the frame. I've got everything I need for a small, medium, large camera to create a multicam podcasting setup. But let's waste no time in getting to the point, so I'll lend you a hand in understanding a little bit more about these cameras before we jump into the setup that I'm going to create using them. So now you're looking at me through the OBSBOT Tiny 3, and it's just mounted directly on top of my MacBook's display right here. And then this is the Tiny 3 Lite, which also is mounted directly on my MacBook. So again, this is the Tiny 3 Lite. And then this over here is the Tiny 3, which is the more premium option of the two new OBSBOT cameras. And right now I'm just running them through Ecamm Live on my MacBook. And I've also got OBSBOT Center open here, which is super cool. And a really exciting update to OBSBOT Center that applies to both of these new cameras is that the white balance option now has a green magenta shift. You have a little bit more control over the colors in your white balance, which is something I've been wanting for a really long time. And this was also added to the Tail 2, which is the much gianter version of these webcams. It looks like the Tiny 3 that like ate all its vegetables and grew into a giant camera. This also now has that adjustment, which is something that I've wanted for a really long time because it not only makes it easier to match these cameras, all the OBSBOT cameras tend to match each other pretty well, but it makes it easy if you're creating a multicam setup to mix and match different brands of cameras. So if I want to match the OBSBOT cameras with my Sony cameras, now I can do that more easily. If I want to throw the Tail 2 in with Sony cameras again, now I can do that more easily. So going back to the Tiny 3, in testing and using this over the past couple of weeks, I have noticed that the image quality seems to be a little bit better even from the Tiny 2, which I was really impressed with. I've really liked this camera in the time that I've had it. But the Tiny 3, just especially the 4K quality, just seems to be a little bit sharper and a little more crisp. And the same is true for the Tiny 3 Lite over here. And something I really like, especially when you're doing face detect autofocus, is that it seems to detect and stick to faces even better, which is something I appreciate. I think if I get close, yeah, there, look at that. Oh, I turned 48 last month. I don't need to get that close to the camera here. And then going back over here to the Tiny 3, kind of the same thing. I go in and it really kind of tracks a little bit better and it doesn't hunt as much. Even in low light, I can turn off my my camera setting here, and now we've got the camera compensating for low light. This is the Tiny 3, and then I can even turn off my fill light. This is pretty dark. So looking at my Sony camera over here, this is about how bright it is in here. And then going over here to the Tiny 3, this is what it looks like in this low light condition, how the autofocus is working. And then going over to the Tiny 3 Lite, same thing in the low light condition with autofocus. You can kind of just turn on auto exposure and it just sort of works. I'm gonna turn my lights back on. And that's a big reason why I want to put together a podcast setup using these cameras, because you have good autofocus, you have good auto adjustments for exposure and all that kind of stuff, and you have PTZ tracking. So even as a one-person crew, or oftentimes the person who has to be hosting the show, talking to someone, and also monitoring everything, you basically have, virtual camera operators and assistants around you, even if it is just you doing the entire production of everything. Oh, and audio is something we need to get into. So right now you're listening to me on the Tiny 3's built-in microphone, which I think is the best sounding webcam microphone I've heard so far. Webcam microphones typically don't sound too great, but in OBSBOT Center, I'm using something called pure audio mode. And there are actually other modes too. So there is a spatial audio mode. If I turn that on, now as I move, you should actually kind of hear me going in, if you're listening to headphones or whatever, you should sort of hear me going in different directions. We also have a smart omni mode. So what omni means is no matter where I go around the microphone, it has an omnidirectional pickup pattern, but it's kind of honing in on the exact area that I'm at and trying to focus specifically on that audio. We've also got a directional mode. So that is just going to be, directional audio directly in front of the camera. And there is also a dual directional mode. So this would be somebody in front of and behind the camera. You know, if you're doing kind of an interview type situation, you can go back and forth that way. But if we go back to pure audio, so right now with the camera mounted on my MacBook, I'm about an arm's length away, and I think this is kind of a typical setup for a lot of people. So if the camera's mounted on your computer, you're probably going to be close enough that pure audio is going to sound pretty great. Now, even though it is the best sounding webcam I've heard, it can't, break the laws of physics or work miracles. So if I'm many feet away from the camera, like back here, it can do its best to make things sound good, but you're still going to hear most of the room. It's still going to sound kind of reverby and kind of echoey. So that means for the podcast setup that I want to put together here, I will be using external microphones, because even when you're doing a video podcast, I still very much believe that audio is the most important part of your setup. So speaking of podcasting setups, my goal here is to take my pretty compact camera bag and fit everything I need for a 3-camera, 2-person multicam podcast in here, and then set it up and record an episode. So right here on my back, in a relatively compact backpack and then 2 light stands, I have an entire multicam podcast set up. And we came out here to this very exotic location called the backyard, where I just wanted to show that there's nothing else extra in my studio. There's no plugs, no extra lights, nothing. We're gonna set up a multicam podcast using just everything here. So here are the 3 cameras that I have set up. 2 of them are on light stands. You just need anything with a 1/4-20 mount, which is one of the cool things about PTZ camera setups, is you don't have to, it's almost like a 360 camera. You don't have to be super specific about like framing and setup, because as long as these are in the right area, then the camera itself can kind of handle the rest of the movement. So I like light stands because they work really well. And then this is just the monopod for my 360 camera. You're just kind of in the middle of the action, buddy. I have long high-speed USB cables that I got for each camera. And then I'm running everything today into Ecamm on my computer. And the reason I'm using my computer is because I want to have access to OBSBOT Center. So that way I can make sure all the cameras, the color looks good. You just saw the sun change. If things change, I can adjust it perfectly in OBSBOT Center and then fine-tune it even more in Ecamm, and it just kind of makes things, makes things easy. But you could do the same thing with OBS on a computer, or you could use external devices, like a YOLO box or the OBSBOT Talent or something along those lines. Everything is set up, and now I can reveal the special secret podcast guest, which is not me this time, but it is my wife, Heather. So here is the way I have everything. I had to add this because it was just adding a lot of glare, but that's not officially part of this setup. We have the Tiny 2 as our 2 shot, so you can see both of us over here. The Tiny 3 is going to be the camera that's pointed at Heather. The Tiny 3 Lite is the camera that's going to be pointed at me. And for audio right now, we're just going to be using the DJI Mic Mini because we're outdoors and that's pretty simple. So Heather has one just pinned to her jacket, and then I have, well, actually I have 2. This one for this camera, which I'm gonna take off, and then I have my Mic Mini right here for the podcast. So I've got 3 scenes here. There's the main scene, which is our 2 shot right there. And then I have Heather on her scene right there, and I have me on my scene right here. The audio is just the DJI Mic Mini. Now in Ecamm, I can also record isolated tracks if I want to. I'm not gonna do that today, but just something to be aware of depending on the software you're using. You might be able to do that. And the reason I like this is because I also have OBSBOT Center here, so I have 3 cameras ready to go, and I can switch to the controls for those cameras. I can enable tracking, I can play with the image, I can adjust settings, everything I need to do, I can just do that right here, going straight into the podcast. So that means we are now ready to begin the first episode of a brand new podcast.
A brand new podcast?
Yeah, you didn't even know.
I didn't know.
No. So now you're looking at us through the podcast setup. 3 cameras, this is our main shot right here, and then we've got the guest shot, and then we've got me over here. I do have tracking turned on, but I turn tracking really slow. So since I'm trying to talk to the guest and we're trying to, pay attention to everything, I don't want to accidentally go out of frame, but I also don't want the tracking to be distracting. So you could use a wide shot and then you don't have to track as much, or you can just turn on, in this case, slow tracking, because if we move, it's not going to be much, and then you can kind of see the tracking is like, it's more natural looking and hopefully not distracting. And obviously, the coolest thing about this is this entire multicam podcast setup was fit inside a small camera bag, and it didn't even take up most of the camera bag And because I'm using 3 webcams, I don't have to worry about batteries. I don't have to worry about memory cards. I just had to have some USB cables. And now these things are going to be good to run for as long as we need them. So then that brings me to my very special guest. Hello, guest.
Hello.
Oh, I should have also mentioned, I'm just using hotkeys on here. So I just did 1, 2, and 3 for the angle. So now I can know this is shot number 1, this is shot number 2, and then I'm shot number 3. Because the guest should always come first. Now, another benefit to this is as exciting things happen, I could potentially go over and track to show you that our dog Ben is right here being a very good guard dog. And Ben, our dog, also does bring me to another point. So I am using 3 cameras here because that's a traditional setup. You have your main shot and then your 2 individual shots. But if you don't have 3 cameras, you could get by, especially because these are PTZ cameras, you could get by doing this with 2 cameras because you could have 1 camera be your main shot, and then you could set a preset where it then zooms in and takes the place of a camera like this. So in that case, what I could do is go here, we have our main shot, the camera zoomed out, I could cut to the guest. While the guest is talking, I could then switch the camera's angle and then cut to it so we don't see. And then we just go back and forth between these 2 angles. And then at the end, maybe I could zoom out and do something like this. So we won't have this angle to cut to constantly like I do with a 3 camera setup, but you could still get by with a 3 or even more angle setup using only 1 or 2 PTZ cameras because you have the ability to create all those preset points. But speaking of points, let's get to the points because that's the whole reason of having a special guest. Did you know that you were on the inaugural episode of a premiere and temporary podcast?
Of one episode podcast.
Welcome to Tom Buck's Bucket List.
Tom Buck's bucket list.
The bucket list,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
So the reason that this is called the bucket list is because I wanted to talk about
Your bucket list.
the bucket list items. You and I
Yes.
were able to, and you didn't even know that you were actually perfectly prepared for this, but
Wow.
you and I were able to check off 2 bucket list items last year.
Were we?
Yeah. You have a really cool shirt on right now.
Oh, yes. The Backstreet Boys.
Yes. We saw the Backstreet Boys at the
we did.
Vegas Sphere.
This is not where I thought you were going to go.
Yeah, I know. And that's why I was glad. So when I noticed that you wore that shirt today, I was like, oh, perfect. And I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to bring it up either because it's too perfect. So we got to see Backstreet Boys in July, which is your
Yes.
favorite band, basically,
My
since...
favorite band. Yes.
Favorite group?
Band. Boy band. It's a band.
Band is in the word boy
Yes.
band, so it counts.
Yeah.
And then, this is the yin to the yang, because in
You
October, you got to go
see-
with me to see my favorite band.
Yes, I did. Blink 182.
Yes.
It was cool how we saw them too, because for anyone who doesn't know, the Backstreet Boys were at the Sphere in Las Vegas, which is like a completely unique concert experience. I wouldn't even honestly put it in the same category. But then like seeing Blink, where it's like the band, it is the instruments, they're playing the instruments, it's live music, it was right here at our arena. That was awesome.
Literally, I have played hockey in the exact spot where like Travis Barker's drum set was set up. It's so cool. I think about it every time I go out there. But it was, what I think was really fun, we each got to share something with the other, right? So
Yeah.
you've talked about Backstreet forever. I've been to your teenage bedroom at your parents' house that still has,
Backstreet Boy paraphernalia.
yeah, probably less than there was at one point,
Oh,
but
totally, yeah.
significant. There's still some there. And then you've heard me talk about Blink-182 many times forever. You're in the video where I unboxed Mark Hoppus's, signature bass and all this stuff. And it was fun to be able to share that with you, to go into to see such a formative part of you, the person I love and care about most, to kind of get, after all these years, like a different insight and to just see, I became a fan. Like,
Oh yeah, we're going again. That's all you though.
oh yeah, we're going, I decided to book
I was
tickets
like, look,
again.
It's a bucket list. I checked it off. Tom was like, we're going again.
It was very cool.
It was so much fun.
So I became a huge fan of something, of what you grew up loving, and then it was really fun to take you to see Blink-182. I don't know, just to share that with you, like...
Tom was so happy. I don't think I've ever seen you so happy. Our wedding day. You were seriously, it was like, yeah, it was like seeing teenage Tom.
So we got to check off 2 bucket list items. We got to share things with each other last year, and that is the Tom Buck bucket list.
The beginning and the end of this.
The alpha and omega of this podcast. But you said You thought we were talking about something else. I'm just curious. What do you think that we were going to talk
so
about?
the last time we did this, we talked about Handles for like 10 minutes,
which is
an ice cream shop that we are
best ice
totally
cream
obsessed
shop.
with. Yes, still obsessed with. Huge fan. Shout out. Go get Handles. So I was like, okay, maybe we're gonna go continue off of our desserts and talk about the amazing chocolate sheet cake that we got at Trader Joe's because of a recommendation from a very sweet lady who is in a wheelchair with her service dog.
Yeah.
And I was like, I really want dessert for Christmas, but I didn't want to bake something. So I was like, okay, let's go to like the pre-made bakery section. And she was standing there and she, for 5 minutes, proceeded to tell us about how this chocolate cake is the best cake that we'll literally ever have in our lives. And she just was like, I'm spending Christmas alone with this cake and my dog, and we're just gonna have a good time. And then we were like, well, how good can it be? Yeah, when we ate that thing, oh, I wanna go get another one. They have a carrot cake one too.
Yeah. They're they have multiple little mini sheet cakes at Trader Joe's.
And then the other thing I thought you were going to talk about was what I thought was our favorite movie from 2025. I might be presuming, but Wake Up Dead Man.
Oh yeah, that got right at the tail end of 2025. We got that. Yeah.
It was so good. Watched on Netflix. Okay.
Yeah, super worth it. Is that your favorite of the Knives Out movies?
Like by far.
Okay.
By far. Oh, so good. The first one's really good, but just like the cinematography, I really appreciated the filmmaking.
Well, thank you for being on the first and last episode of this podcast.
This was fun.
The other thing I want to point out is you do have the option of using OBSBOT's own tiny wireless microphones. So we talked about the audio from the Tiny 3 before. This is the Tiny 3's audio on pure audio. And the way I'm doing that is I just have the Tiny 3 microphone selected right here in Ecamm. But if I go over to OBSBOT Center right here, on the Tiny 3 settings, it has built-in mic. I can also just change that to external mic. And then this is still going with the Tiny 3 microphone, but you might have noticed the audio quality changed because it switched to the microphone that's closer to me. So now this is, the reason I didn't use this for our podcast because I only have one of them and I have 2 guests. So I needed a dual microphone setup. But if you don't want to have to deal with plugging in a receiver and stuff like I was doing here with the DJI mics, you could just use the OBSBOT microphone connected to the camera itself. So overall, I'm very happy and impressed with how that podcasting setup came out, especially we had to deal with some weather and some sun and some last minute location changes, all of those things that can really happen when you're trying to do a multicam podcast, especially on the go. Heather and I kind of encountered all of that and it still came out great. It sounds good, it looks good, all 3 cameras worked really well. And as I mentioned just a moment ago, the OBSBOT little microphones actually work really well and it's kind of cool they pair just directly to the camera. Even though I love my DJI mics and my other wireless mics a lot, you still have to then have their transmitters and that connection, and that can make the setup slightly more cumbersome. So knowing that there is an option to connect decent microphones directly to the cameras when you want that external audio also just makes this even more practical. And that's really what I wanted to do with this setup, is create something super practical, something very compact. You know, all 3 of these cameras combined cost less than the lens on this camera. So putting lots of power in a relatively budget-friendly setup that's also very compact. If you're somebody who travels to include guests on your podcast, you want to film stuff on location, you want to record episodes at conventions or conferences, now you don't just have to stick with one camera or your phone. You can do a legit multi-cam setup with just a laptop and some cables, and you're pretty much all set. So I hope this was a helpful look at kind of a unique podcasting setup that is probably more capable and practical than you might expect. Maybe there's some good things you can cherry pick, some good ideas that you can include into your own setup and your own workflow, and then things can look and sound as good as possible. And thank you again to OBSBOT for sponsoring this video. If you want to take things even further and check out the Tail 2, the flagship premium PTZ R webcam, check out this video right here.